Okay, we are continuing our club history series of videos, and in this video we're looking at the history of Newcastle United. Fantastic club from the northeast, big rivals of Sunderland, we've already done a video on. Now, their nickname is the Magpies because of the black and white stripes they play in. The fan base is nicknamed the Toon Army, possibly the best fan base I've ever come across in all my time watching football, supporting football, meeting people out and about. The Toon Army have to be, in my mind, the most passionate, loyal fan base I've ever met. They currently play at St James's Park, one of two stadiums called St James's Park in this country, the other one being in Exeter, the home of Exeter City, but Newcastle's St James's Park seats 52,305, significantly bigger than Exeter's smaller version down in the West Country. Now, the history for Newcastle United begins in 1892 with a merger of two clubs in Newcastle. The aptly named Newcastle East End and their big rivals, the aptly named in Newcastle West End. They merged together to form Newcastle United Football Club. The following year, in 1893, they joined the Football League, and since they've been in the Football League, they have never been below the second division. They've never been below what is now classed as the Championship. They've always been in the top two tiers of English football. That is the fun fact that I decided to put in for this video. Now, I'll discuss the ownership changes that we've seen over the last 12 months in regards to Mike Ashley selling to Amanda Staveley's led consortium later on in the video, but I thought I'd mention it now because it has been a big thing on this channel's existence, discussing the protracted sale and takeover since 2017 when Mike Ashley put the club up for sale. Amanda Staveley's 3 bids she had in total, including the one that finally got over the line. One of the most drawn-out, longest, most diabolical sales processes I think I've ever come across, and I'm kind of glad it's over, to be honest, but I understand the frustration of Newcastle fans. Now, let's get to Newcastle United's trophy cabinet, and it is a very interesting trophy cabinet as well. They win their first league title, and this is what I find interesting about their league titles. Their first 3 league titles they win in alternate seasons, which I find really, really interesting. It shows that at some point there were some other pretty competitive sides to break up Newcastle United's dominance. They first win in 1904-1905 season, and again, as I said, the alternate years, they don't win it again until 2 seasons later in 1906-1907 season, and they don't win it again until the 1908-1909 season. So there were, alternate years. But 3 out of 5 seasons, they win the league. That is very, very interesting. They finally win it for the last time in the 1926-27 season. Now, yes, you could also argue World War I has impacted the run of this team and football in general because league play was suspended, but they last win the league in 1927, so they've won 4 league titles. Most recently, they were runners-up in the Premier League in the 95-96 season, possibly, in my opinion, the best team never to win the Premier League for a squad assemble. That was a brilliant team, David Ginola amongst others playing in that side, and the 96-97 team also was a runner-up in the Premier League. Now we get to their FA Cup triumphs, and there's quite a few here as well. So while they're a pretty dominant side in Division 1, they also win their first FA Cup in the 1909-1910 season. So the season after they won their third Division 1 title, they win their first FA Cup title. And a Charity Shield in that year as well. So 1909 is a very, very, very good year for Newcastle. They don't win it again until the 1923-24 season. Obviously, the war has impacted the flow of English football, but they win it after the war in 1923-24, and they win it before World War II in the 1931-32 season. World War II happens, but in the early to mid-50s, they win the FA Cup 3 more times. In the 1950-51 season, the 51-52 season, so in back-to-back years, and finally in the 1954-55 season, which is their last domestic trophy. So it has been a very long time domestically since Newcastle United tasted any silverware. Also, as I mentioned, they won the Charity Shield in 1909. So the 1900s was quite a good period. The 1950s was quite a good period. And there was a little purple patch in the 20s and 1 trophy in the 30s. Now, they've been runners-up in 1998 and 1999 in the FA Cup, falling afoul of a great Arsenal side in 98 and, of course, the Man United treble-winning side in 1999. Not bad sides to lose to, but in 4 consecutive seasons, Newcastle runners-up in major trophies, which is so frustrating because they could have won the Premier League in back-to-back seasons and they could have won the FA Cup in back-to-back seasons in a 4-year spell. That was possibly the best side not to win a trophy, and I tell you, that side of the mid to late 90s was a fantastic team that came oh so close to being a world-class team. Things have changed since then, but let's continue with the trophies before we discuss the ups and downs of Newcastle since the 99 season. The old Intercities Fairs Cup, which became the UEFA Cup, which became the Europa League, was won in 1968-69. So yes, Newcastle do have that European trophy. Now, if you count the Intertoto Cup of 2006, you have 2 European trophies, which in total, as major trophies that are still, under the UEFA coefficient, because the old Division 1 is now the Premier League, you've won 13 major honours as a football club. That is a fantastic achievement and should not be taken away from or sniffed at. The problem is you haven't won for a very, very long time. Domestically, the last trophy was in 1955, and in Europe was 1969, if you don't count the Intertoto Cup, which is now defunct. Of course, I've mentioned the big rivals being Sunderland. The Tyne-Wear derby has been competed for since 1898. That is a fierce, one of the oldest rivalries in English football. Over 100 years of rivalry, over 120 years of rivalry. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. Now we get to the ownership. Now, the last time Newcastle really were a real top side, and I mean a real top side, and I know they've been a Premier League side for the most part, but a couple of spells in the second tier since 99, was 1999. The decline from then has been sharp and quite public, really. It comes to a head when Mike Ashley buys the club in 2007. Now, they won the Intertoto Cup in 2006, the year before he buys the club. So there's a hint of we're on the way back up. We've got that little taste of success again. Mike Ashley buys the club in 2007, which begins a very long period of 14 years of his ownership, where the club is relegated twice from the Premier League. Bouncing back at the first attempt each time, I will add. But the fortunes on the field aren't great. Fans are getting frustrated, which you are rightly within your rights to do so. Then 2017 comes along, and I remember this because this is when the channel that I'm now on started up. And the protracted attempted sale by Mike Ashley to Amanda Staveley and others, there were other bids on the table, and bids collapsed and then stalled and then were mothballed and came back out again. And Amanda Staveley didn't give up. She didn't give up. Fair play to her. And we can all argue the pros and cons of having the public investment fund of Saudi Arabia involved in the takeover with an 80% stake. But for a 4-year period, the ownership of Newcastle United was in limbo, and it impacted the team on the field. Rafa Benitez and Steve Bruce did, in my opinion, even though Steve Bruce's last half season was a disaster, and yeah, he was replaced, obviously. But under Rafa and under Steve Bruce, they pulled off magician's tricks with no investment. The club was not invested in by Mike Ashley. Eventually, that sale, after being blocked by the Premier League for 18 months, finally gets over the line at the end of last year in 2021. Eddie Howe is installed as manager. Their form rapidly changes. A couple of signings, suddenly they're a mid-table side again. They're one of the worst records in the Premier League when Eddie Howe takes over as manager. Right in the relegation fight, looking dead certain to go down. Eddie Howe pulled off a magician's trick. Brought confidence back to the playing group. A couple of signings helps as well. But only a couple. It wasn't like they bought a whole load of players. They bought a couple of players. And there is hope on the horizon. Now, we can argue the pros and cons of the involvement of the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia with Amanda Staveley and the Reuben brothers. If it was just Amanda Staveley and the Reuben brothers, I don't think there's any concerns about the ownership of the football club. But because there is that Saudi money involved, it has become a bit of a controversial takeover. But I understand Newcastle fans are glad to see the back of Mike Ashley, because under the Mike Ashley era, that was the period of what I call decline. In the modern era of Newcastle United, they stopped being contenders for FA Cups and Premier Leagues and getting into the Champions League to we're getting relegated again this season. And it was a shame because Newcastle is a fantastic club, fantastic fan base. The stadium is fantastic, most loyal fan base I've seen. Alongside, in fact, the North East in general has fanatical fans. Sunderland, Newcastle, the Tyne-Wear derby is a fantastic derby, full of the reds and the blacks and the whites and all the colour, the rivalry that goes back to 1898. But it's lost something in recent years, and hopefully Sunderland on the way back up, Newcastle on the way back up in fortunes, that rivalry can be reignited in coming years. But there we go, there's a brief history of Newcastle United. 13 major honours if you include the Intertoto Cup of 2006. which is not a bad return. It's just domestic silverware has dried up since the 50s. But one day, hopefully under this current ownership, that can be reversed. And that team in the 90s, what a fantastic team. It ignited a lot of my friends' love of football. And to be fair, I've always had a soft spot for Newcastle United. And it was so frustrating seeing them not get over the line in the 90s. It really was. 4 consecutive seasons of being so close. Possibly the best team not to win a trophy with the squad assembled. But there you go. There's my history of Newcastle United. Thank you very much for watching. And I will have some more videos for you very, very soon.